Welcome to 103.2 Dublin City FM and the Conscious Living Show. I'm Liz Velour, and my guest this week, a very different guest, is Denise Devlin. Now, Denise is the founder of Positive Parties and Positive Dancing. You do it with Irish Dancing. And Positive Parties, it's an interactive, unique way of blending fun with training and coaching in life skills. She's an NLP practitioner, but she's also a scribe of the book Untold Story, Jesus and Peter, the Gap Years. Now, I say scribe because it was channeled through Denise, and we'll discuss how it came about shortly. Denise, you are so welcome.
Thank you, Liz.
You're an ordinary woman, married with 2 children, and you founded this company, Positive Parties. You were in business before and things, but what is Positive Parties all about?
Well, Positive Parties really is, it's training with a difference.
Yeah.
It's, I suppose the catchphrase is it's a inspirational, motivational and transformational training and coaching company, and we deliver fun workshops promoting positive mental health and positive mental attitude in a unique party style environment. So it's basically bringing fun into the workplaces and to schools and communities, and delivering training that is coming from the heart, that brings people back to being childlike, to play, to have fun, to raise their vibration. And in doing so, then I use all my teachings from neuro-linguistic programming and cognitive behavioural therapy and positive psychology. So people are learning all these lovely tools and techniques.
But they're doing it when they're having fun.
Yeah. It's like a party.
It is an interesting thing, really, about this whole thing about having fun. I often think if you bring it back to Jesus' thing of, unless you be as little children, you cannot enter the kingdom of God. And to me, the kingdom of God is happiness.
Of course.
It's being happy with yourself. It's that at ease with the world and at ease with whatever is going on.
Yeah.
And to do that, you do need to be able to have fun, don't you?
Yeah.
That's why I loved working with children, because they brought that part out in me. So teaching children was always Positive Parties to me,
yes.
Whereas it could be a mental health issue for somebody else, But Denise, like when you do a party, when people come in and you go to the corporate world and you schools and community centres and lots of different things like that, but when you do it, are you met with resistance when sometimes, these people who are used to a business world take one look at some of the props you bring with you and think, I'm out of here?
There are some people that are resistant at the start, obviously, but I always make it very clear. It's like, as Albert Einstein said, make it simple, make it fun. And this is what, the room is always set up like a party. So the manager or the HR manager or the director, their principal, who employs me to come along and deliver the Positive Party, I say to them, please do not tell your staff it's a Positive Party. Just say it's a training about positive mental health or positive mental attitude, or it's a team building day. And then they can't look the website up and get freaked out by, some of the photographs.
Yeah.
So when people come into the room, Liz, it's set up like a party. Like there's signs saying the party's here, there's balloons, there's Hawaiian garlands, on the seats, the music's blaring, let's get the party started. So people come in and they're surprised.
Yes.
Initially. The extroverts are excited, the introverts are a bit afraid. So immediately I tell them that nobody's going to be picked on. This is going to be fun. Everybody's going to be doing something like a group. It's going to be very interactive. You're going to learn things about your colleagues that you didn't know, personal and fun and positive things.
Yeah.
So,
or a side of people they never see in the workplace.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And we always make it like, when people tell positive stories, then it's like everybody claps and cheers and woohoo. And I usually do that at the start, and then people are saying, I says, come on, I'm not going to be the only one doing this. And then people join in, and the energy is so high that people just relax into it, and then there's always characters that are good crack or good fun, and there's a bit of banter, and I can facilitate that well. It's amazing.
It helps them come outside the box, doesn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
And they end up, we do games, like they play Pass the Parcel, they play, musical statues, we do the hokey cokey, but every tool and technique I'm bringing in neuro-linguistic programming, cognitive behavioural therapy, and nobody has time to
analyse it.
Yeah. Or to start getting bored and falling asleep. It's interactive, it's fun, there's so much laughter.
Yes.
And so much, it all comes from the heart, because people are telling heart-centred stories about themselves and their lives. Yeah.
And the other thing too is they've got to work in a team with individuals throughout the whole thing, as far as I can make out listening to you. And this is where the team building comes in, and this is where people let down these barriers that they have.
Totally. There was a lovely example, about this man, this team building I was doing once, and there was these men, they worked with homeless people, so they were working like late nights, and they were doing different shifts. But when we were talking, there's a discussion about reading inspirational books and watching like feel good programs that people would watch, and I got people to share. And one man talked about The Power of Now. He said, because I brought up The Power of Now, I have this, and I talked about some books, and some guys said, yes, I've read that book, I love it. And at the other end of the room, one of his colleagues goes, I've read that book too. And you could just see the two of them,
the connection,
their eyes light up and the smile on their faces, that neither of them knew that the other one was into Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now, and they had awakened. And it was just that moment for me, that's what makes it worthwhile, when you see things like that happen, and you knew immediately that these two were going to have such a different connection, and their tea breaks and coffee breaks and team meetings again would never be the same.
As you go a spiritual journey, or as you're questioning, you think you're on your own.
Yes, totally.
And if you're in a workplace, there are times you don't want to reveal that you're actually thinking differently, looking at things differently because of the put downs. But when you put them into a positive parties atmosphere, and then they learn about certain things in a different way, not in like dogma, like that. They're learning actually the same principles but in a different way.
Totally.
And it's gorgeous. But Denise, in the background, you were always on a spiritual journey, weren't you?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And one day, while you were journaling, was it the anniversary of your friend's death? You were journaling.
Yes, it was Fi had passed over on the 20th of May.
Yeah.
And this was her birthday. She would have turned 50 on the 23rd of February.
Yeah.
So I was journaling to her, and then it was 2 days later that the scribing happened.
You said, what does my soul want to know? When you began journaling, you said, what does my soul want to know? What wants to emerge from me now? And that is when you had some experience.
I know.
Go and describe it.
My arm just, Liz, took off by itself. And I had no control of my right arm, and it started scrubbling all over the page. And then
so you started writing actual things down.
It wasn't to start, it was just scribbles. It just scrubble, and then I had to turn over the page. My arm wouldn't stop. I had no control of my arm.
Okay.
And then it would stop, and then I wrote another question, and then it scrubbled again. So every time I asked those questions that you listed there, my arm just was uncontrollable. Yeah.
Did it scare the living daylights out of you?
Do you know, it didn't. Orla, my daughter, was there at the time. So what age was she then? She was about 10.
Yeah.
And she just said, Mommy, what's happening? And I said, Orla, there's something here. This is from a higher power. I says, I don't know. She says, are you scared? I says, no, because I knew it was a beautiful energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And scribing has happened before, because Jean Foster wrote the Godmind books, and they were all automated writing.
Yeah.
And Paddy McMahon wrote under the name Patrick Francis the Grand Design books. These were all scribed as well. Yeah. So it is a known thing that can happen to certain people. Totally. It's just when you're living an ordinary life, a mum of a couple of kids, you don't expect it to happen to you, do you?
Totally.
Exactly. Okay, so when you were scribing, Did any of the information that you were given, did it challenge you?
It did. Like, it was a couple of days later when that was the first day, the scrubbling. The next day was scrubbling, and then words started taking form.
Okay.
And then it was on the 1st of March that I had to sit down, get a journal and start scribing that morning. So it was every morning.
Yes.
From the 1st of March all through Lent, the 40 days of Lent. I had to get up at 6 in the morning and scribe. Now,
did you choose to get up at 6?
No.
Or?
If I didn't, my arm would like whack my husband Neil in the bed beside me. It's just my arm. If I didn't get up at 6, my arm would take off by itself, and Neil would just laugh and say, "You better get up, St. Peter's calling." And I had to get up.
How did you know it was St. Peter?
There was this knowing.
Yeah.
There was this knowing, and then there was some synchronicities that happened.
Okay.
One being, my husband and I were watching a program the day after the arm had started coming in, and we were watching Homeland, and there was a character in it, and he was called Peter. Yes. And when his name was mentioned, my arm took off by itself. Okay. And Neil said, "What's going on here?" And I says, "Neil, I just have this knowing that it's St. Peter." Okay. And then Neil went to bed, and I Googled St. Peter when the feast day was, and it was the 29th of June, and I thought, that means nothing to me. Yeah. But then I looked underneath, and it says it can also be celebrated on the 18th of November, and there was loads of signs and synchronicities that I just knew. I actually talked about the 18th of November earlier that day, so that was confirmation.
So what was Peter? What did he want to tell you? What was so important that he was going to come through you? Like, what did he want? What was his message?
The message really is that this is a time when it's not scribed, it's not written. The time when him and Jesus had a friendship, that worked together in a business, and like worked together, as we would call today, like networking. Yes. With like the carpenter and the fisherman, and it was stories. It's stories about their life together from they were about 23 up until it ends the night before Jesus' 30th birthday.
Tell me one of the stories. It just sounds fascinating.
Well, so one of the stories, and this was something that I had questions in the middle of the scribing. Not that I didn't believe it or totally believe this is true, but it was the fear of writing it down. He talks about him, Jesus and Peter, actually meeting these two men, and Jesus had brought them back to have dinner with Peter and his wife Sarah. And when they were having dinner, Jesus had asked these two men, they had talked about they didn't have wives, they didn't have families, and they had come away from their land. And Jesus asked them, "Do you love like man and wife?" And I then stopped, because I thought, this is really controversial. Like, I was in the middle of scribing, I just had to scribe what I heard. Yeah. And I stopped, and this is what I was saying. So I just actually have this bit of the book in front of me, and in brackets I have in italics here, this is what was said to me by St. Peter: "Do not analyse what I say, but open your heart and listen. I have more to tell you about the two men that came to have lunch with Jesus and Sarah." Yeah, yeah. So it went on to say that, yes, they did live like man and wife. Yeah. And Jesus said to them, took the two of them by the hand and said, there are enough people, there are enough men and women in the world to procreate, that this too is love. Yes. And that he, my Father accepts this and loves this, and go love is love, basically. That's what he said. Yeah. That's actually a beautiful story, isn't it? Absolutely. It's beautiful. And my only reluctance to follow through on the story was this is coming from a higher power, but when I put this in, what will people think? Each chapter has, it's almost like Peter putting it into contemporary life, the story into contemporary life. This is how this would look like in your life where you're living now. Yeah. Is there another story that you have that would be special? There's the stories about Sarah, Peter's wife.
Yeah.
And how she actually enjoyed working with wood.
Yeah.
So then Jesus took her and Peter shared the childcare, because she used to spend a couple of days in with Jesus and working, and she really, it made her whole as well. And other people in the village didn't like that, the other men in the village, because they didn't want their wives doing it, because at that stage it was the wife to be at home. But he says we need balance here, and she said she got as much joy out of doing that as she did of nursing their daughter Maria.
But when you think about it, she was allowed to use her creativity rather than bottle it up.
Yeah.
And that's really what's going on today.
Totally.
Except we're going through a huge adjustment, because there's so much pressure in the workplace for women and men that it's creating pressure in family as well.
Yes.
That ultimately there's going to have to be a balance of how a slow down from the intensity of what's going on. Isn't it?
Yeah, and Peter talks a lot about, and Jesus, about simplicity.
Yeah.
About coming back to simplicity. We don't need all these material things. We don't need to rush. We don't do, because each chapter has a story, Liz, about what happened, and then Peter's view of this day and age.
So he converts the story into how it is in this day and age.
Even talking about social media, how, we can use it, to connect, but like how much it has taken over our lives.
But it has. Like, it really, really has. And I know that, like, from my own personal thing, was my grandchildren were away camping and they couldn't connect with internet.
Yeah.
And they were like lunatics for about 3 days. And at the end of the 3 days, they connected with their friends and they had a great time. They had an absolutely brilliant time. They had forgotten how it felt to be out there in nature with that freedom and having that type of fun.
Yeah.
So now that they've come home from the holiday, they're doing things with their mum and dad, they're paddleboarding and doing all sorts of things. But it's helping the whole family connect.
Of course,
But the kids nearly went ballistic for about 3 days because they're on a detox.
Yeah,
but it's not just the kids, it's become the norm for everybody. Yeah. But what I took from, because I read the book some months ago, and what I took from it, that Peter was leading us past dogma to help us find out who we truly are.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the feeling.
That's it.
I got from it.
He talks a lot about the churches, how the churches, and this is not in any way judgmental about that's the word, about any religious organisation at all, because the core being of it is the spirituality and connecting with all it is with God. But it's just the man-made rules and the dogma, and why should anybody be made to feel that they are any less than they are, because we are all a part of the divine.
Yeah.
And we all come from that centre in our hearts that is made of, which is just true love. So, and the thing is too, it did talk about, just because someone has studied, like a priest or a minister or like anybody has studied religion, it doesn't make them any better than anybody else.
In fact, they get stuck in their heads more. Yeah. Than experiencing nature, experiencing stillness, experiencing all the beautiful things that are all around you, and they are there.
There's a part in the book too, and it actually where Jesus actually said, Peter, hug a tree. He would far rather have to see people out hugging a tree and connecting with the nature, and feeling that heartbeat in the tree, than sitting in, like I suppose, a service or a mass for like an hour and just being there for habit and just totally switching off.
I often think of a little girl, it was years ago, and her mum wanted her to go to mass, and she eventually convinced the little one to go. She'd have been about 5 or 6 at the time, and she really was twitchy throughout the whole thing, and she just turned around to the mum and in a loud voice said, "Holy God would want me to be out in his glorious sunshine and not in here listening to that old fella." And it was just, straight out the heart. Mouths of children is brilliant. But Denise, you were taken on this journey. You were brought to another level when Peter then began to speak through you.
Yeah, I know.
How did that? What did that experience?
Oh my goodness, it was just before the book launch.
Yeah.
I launched the book on the feast day of St. Peter and St. Paul, the 29th of June 2018, and it must have been just a few weeks before that, and I was doing a meditation in our sunroom, and my husband, I just like that knowing again. In the meditation, I was sitting in the silence. I had a feeling something's going to happen here. And as I sat in the silence, all of a sudden then I could feel something happening in my throat.
Right.
And then this just noise came out. So it was like me going, oh, 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 oh. And I couldn't close my mouth. And it was like I was roaring. Right. And my husband came running down the stairs, and it was just comical because it was like I looked up and there's like him and the dog just looking at me, and Neil still was shaving foam on him. And I was just pointing at my mouth going, oh, oh, oh. And he was shrugging my shoulders because I couldn't stop.
Yes.
I physically couldn't stop this noise coming out of my mouth. And when it eventually stopped, I said to Neil, oh my goodness. I says, what did that look like? He says, well, I thought you were either having a stroke or there's something. I says, Neil, there's something, again, it's coming from that source, it's coming from. And I says, I have a feeling it's St. Peter coming through. And I started to cry because I was like overwhelmed, because I said, now there's the book and now there's a voice coming through.
Yeah.
So, but I wasn't scared.
Yes.
And it took a while, like it really took a while for me to even, to really, I suppose, accept that and embrace it. Okay.
Now, like, if you were to say, if Peter had a message for people out there, what would it be? What would it be?
Be true to yourselves. Come from your heart space. Get out of your heads. This life is meant for living. It is meant for fun. You are not meant to worry or strive or listen to others telling you what to do. Everyone knows in their own heart and soul where they should come from and what they need to do. Follow your heart. Be kind. Live simply. Love others. Forgive those who have harmed you, and come from that place of unconditional love. This is the message that Jesus had throughout his whole life, and it is the message of Christ consciousness that is coming through now for one and all. More people are waking up to this. More are believing themselves, their true core, coming from source, coming from spirit. Go back to that place. Be in the silence. Be in the love. And spread that love to others. But most of all, give that love to yourself, for you are a true spark of the divine.
Denise, that's extremely powerful.
Yeah. And that just happens. I get a bit emotional now. I don't just do that. You know, I wouldn't sit here in Dublin City FM and do that. It's just, it comes through, and it's just part of my journey now, and where I'm going.
And can Peter give this message to anyone? Can somebody contact you, and can you help them in their journey to understand difficulties that's going on and challenges that are going on for them?
Yeah, Liz, those who are open to this, and are drawn to St. Peter and the energy, are drawn to come to me for, I now do channeling sessions, like their spiritual guidance, and their healing. St. Peter gives a healing, and people ask questions, and St. Peter comes through, and the questions that people ask is quite amazing, because it's confirmation really from what they already know, and they get such clarity, and those who are open to it feel the healing. And this is either in person, if anybody is, wants to come to Strabane and do a one-to-one with me, or I can do this in Zoom, and I do it to people all over the world now, and I never in my life thought I would be doing this.
I can imagine it, because are you exhausted after a session?
It is. It takes a lot out of. I couldn't do more than 2 a day.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, because my body, the energy coming through is so powerful.
Right.
That and that was really validated for me a few weeks ago when I was doing actually a positive party session up in Enniskillen, and it was a 45-minute taster session, and there was like 25-30 people in the room, and the lovely Karen Dwyer and Declan Coyle were there as well. They were on after me, and at the end of it I said to everybody, I'm going to do this for the first time. I'm going to do a St. Peter heart activation.
Yeah.
And I put my hands up, and the power, the energy that comes out of my hands is just really, really powerful. And there was one man in the room, and when St. Peter's energy came in, and he came through me and channeled through me and said, this is a heart activation of unconditional love. This man, and he was a big man, collapsed, and he fell to the floor, and his wife came round him and another lady, and they just said, this has happened before. And I thought, well, bless it. They said, continue, it's okay, this has happened. So I thought he had epilepsy or he was a diabetic, but he wasn't. It was the energy, and this had happened to him before at Lourdes and Medjugorje.
Oh my goodness. Denise, where can people contact you?
DeniseDevlin.ie.
And they can see you, they can listen to some of your stories, and they can get in contact with you there.
Yes.
Now, this was an interview with a beautiful difference.
Thank you.
And I'm absolutely delighted to have been able to do this with you.
Thank you so much, Liz.
You're welcome.